Hello, romance lovers. Today's story is called My Destiny is to Become a Savior of the Main Character. If you enjoy our videos, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss out on more exciting stories. Ariadne Eldir is the heir of Duke Eldir. Despite her beauty, she was only a minor character who died before the novel began. But her fate changed the very moment she was born, which is why Ariadne is forced to survive at any cost. The girl was thoughtfully looking out the window of her luxurious mansion, when at that very moment a servant called her when it was time for her to go on her way. Ariadne, accompanied by a servant, walked along the corridor strewn with royal wealth and splendor. She appeared to be silent and obedient, but in reality she was turning over in her head a plan of escape for which she had an unprecedented chance. But suddenly her thoughts were interrupted by voices coming from a luxurious room, the door of which was slightly open. A young man and a bearded old man in expensive clothes were having a heated discussion about a girl who had excellent magical abilities and who had died. The younger man says that they were in love and that she died at the hands of monsters. But from the old man, Arya hears a cry that he was obliged to save the girl at any cost. Continuing to tearfully deny his guilt, the young man confesses that his beloved once said that if she died, she was not worthy of being a holy virgin. The man is deeply in despair and says that he will never forgive himself. But the old man still finds him disgusting. Suddenly, the maid slams the door of this very room, to which Ariadne asks her if the two were talking about her mother. She calmly took the girl by the hand and waved her off, reminding her that the Duke was busy, because of which they would have to wait a little. Solon Garcia is the same bearded old man, the grandfather of the main character, who is a very talented magician who received the title of Great Magician of the Empire. Because of the girl's father, Ariadne's mother became pregnant early, which made the powerful magician hate him so much that he disowned his own daughter. Only after learning of her death, the old man returned after 8 years. The girl noted that Solon is the same as he was in the novel, since he doubts his daughter's death. Dark memories came flooding back to the girl, causing her to nervously clutch the fabric of her dress in her hand. In them, her mother bursts into the room, runs up to her daughter in fear, and looks at her wrists, which were covered in scratches and bruises. Mom explains to Arya that she shouldn't study this, to which the girl is surprised, because her father, on the contrary, forced her to study. Mom, whose eyes are streaming with tears, promises Ariadne that she will not let her go through this again. She hugs her daughter, asking her for forgiveness. In the next memory, Arya, in her father's arms, asks him where her mother is. Dad calmly replies that she went on a trip and adds that if she does her job well, she will tell him where she is. The girl, excited by this opportunity, readily agrees, which brings sincere smiles to both of them. Emerging from her memories, Ariadne, with a special sadness on her face, concludes that she will endure all the difficulties, no matter what it costs her. Meanwhile, the waiting time came to an end. The girl and her maid had the opportunity to enter. The grandfather wanted to see his granddaughter. As she walked into the room, Arya was still thinking about her perfect chance, which was reflected in her constrained and stern mood. But as soon as the girl's father introduced Arianda to her grandfather, that stiffness was blown away as if by the wind. The sweet blue-eyed girl appeared before the men, her face lighting up with a smile. Dad wanted to introduce his daughter with dignity, naming her age, which was approaching 7 years, but Solon interrupted him because he already knew. In a short silence, the old magician frowned at the girl, looking at her sky-blue eyes and blonde hair, which were a copy of her father. Ariadne bowed elegantly before her grandfather and, as it turned out, read his thoughts. He was thinking that she was not like her mother, which made him very angry. Solon waved his hand and ordered his granddaughter to come closer to get a good look. But then the young heroine remembers that it was at this moment in the novel that she became frightened and rushed into her father's arms. Because little children sense when people don't like them and when they don't, because according to the novel, her grandfather hated her. Perhaps the main character would have done the same now, but she knows the plot of the novel. The father wanted to bring his daughter to reason, but at the last moment she slipped out from under his hand. Gathering her courage before that very chance, the girl grabs the great mage's cloak. Solon, not expecting such abruptness, raised his hand up as if he was going to throw the child away. But Arya desperately begs her grandfather to take her with him. She believes that even though he hates her, she will be much better off with him than with her father. The girl still clings to her grandfather. In her thoughts, she begs him to take her away from her father. The girl's father gently touches her shoulder, reminding her that he had already explained how to behave in front of guests. Ariadne had already lost all hope of salvation when her father began to try to take her away from her grandfather. However, at this point, Grandpa Solon ordered his father to stop. He kindly asks his granddaughter if she really wants to go with him. The girl, in whose heart hope has appeared again, confirms everything with a smile, and the old man, stroking Arya on the head, decides that she can go with him. The grandfather and granddaughter took each other's hands and were about to leave when the father began arguing again. Ariadne cannot leave. She has a weak body, and trouble could happen to her. Solon, in turn, claims that nothing terrible will happen to her, and her desire is justified by the fact that they have not seen each other for a very long time. However, the father insists on his own. Having made sure that the old man is not going to give in to him, he decides to use force. He makes his daughter go back by shouting. His order was followed by no action. Solon Garcia, casting a menacing glance at him, reminded the boor in rude language which of the two bore the title of Great Mage. Frightened by such rudeness, the father still continued his opera about how he would report his grandfather for kidnapping, which he didn't care about at all. The Great Mage and his grandson left the room, listening to their father's screams behind them. Already in the carriage, the girl peers at her castle, from which she is gradually moving away. She does not believe that it was so easy for her to escape. The Great Mage broke the silence between them, asking why his granddaughter was so scared and clung to him. The girl herself recalls that according to the novel, her grandfather hates her, and this question should not have been asked according to the script. Ariadne is so surprised by her grandfather's tenderness that she begins to cry. Not knowing why she started crying, she tried to stop, but it didn't work. Solon notices her granddaughter's sad mood and hugs her, allowing her emotions to flow out. In her grandfather's arms, Arya sighed heavily, after which she burst into tears throughout the entire carriage. According to the novel, Ariadne Eldir, the heir of Duke Eldir, could not become a saint despite her strength and died at the age of 16. Arya learned of this fate when she was 7 years old. Time is transported back to Eldir's father's castle. He is in his office, examining some vials with an unknown liquid. He turns back and glances at his daughter, who is sitting nervously on a chair, as if expecting torture. She shudders, sweating profusely. Her father notices this and tells her not to worry. He won't do anything dangerous. Duke Eldir bends over his daughter, burying his hand in her hair, causing Ariadne to scream in a silent voice. A purple liquid pours out of a bottle encrusted with precious stones. Arya tries to stop her dad. She is scared and in pain. She closes her eyes and, as if in a dream, stops moving. Reality seems to have shattered into pieces. Suddenly, Arya begins to gain consciousness, more like a stream of illusions. She remembers her name, the world she lives in, but not all the pieces fit together. Besides this, she also remembers some other life, where there is no magic, modern houses and smartphones. It dawns on her that she is seeing her past life, where she was an ordinary 28-year-old girl. But a sudden white light illuminated everything around, and Ariadne found herself in the same magical world, in a luxurious library. She walked over to the bookshelf, picked up the first one she came across, and noticed that she had already read this book about fairies in her past life. Next, she decides to look at another shelf of books and also concludes that everything that is here, she read in a past life. Ariadne Eldir realizes that she has entered her library of memories from a past life. She notices another shelf with books from the same series lined up. Taking out one of the parts of the novel, she opens the book and looks at the pages. Running her eyes over the letters, she notices something she clearly didn't expect to see there. Her name, Ariadne Eldir. She remembers the plot of a novel with her name, which she had already read in a past life. Axel Valentine, the main character, who has the ability to return to the past, tried to save the world from the invasion of demonic creatures. But despite all efforts, the world fell. It was filled with snakes that crawled across thousands of bones. The novel, according to the main character, ended meaninglessly. Having read from the book the words about a certain Franz Eldir who had 2 children, the girl recalls that Ariadne Eldir did not live long. This saddens her, and she can only accept it. Accept that she is the Ariadne of this world. The girl reads a paragraph about Franz and learns that his biological daughter, Ariadne Eldir, died at the age of 16, and he had to appoint his second child, his adopted daughter, Helen Eldir, as his heir. Everyone thought Helen was a genius, but she was using the wrong power. She was using the Holy Virgin's technique to heal her soul, and only thanks to the artifacts that the Duke made, she was able to become the mistress of spirits. The last lines about the technique of the Holy Virgin and artifacts greatly interested the girl. She is taken into account in the book even more carefully. Arya learns that she is barely mentioned in the novel, and that she is now the one playing this role. With these thoughts, the girl notices her hand, full of scratches. Arya's eyes fill with tears. It hurts her to realize that she was at such a young age. In the background, the girl remembers that torture with her father, and thanks to the past life that she saw in a dream, it dawns on her that such love from her father is not normal. These memories touched a sensitive chord in the main character, and her tears fell like drops onto the pages of the book. Looking at the scratches on her hand, she cannot understand how someone could treat their own daughter so horribly. But suddenly she remembers another detail. Namely, her dad once told her that her mom allegedly went on a trip. This seriously scares her because she guesses that in fact her father simply killed her mother, which means that if he killed her, he could kill his own daughter. The girl's courage takes over. Having decided that her father is very dangerous, she swears to herself that she will find out the truth and change the ending of this novel at any cost. Time goes back to where the little granddaughter is crying in her grandfather's arms. The old man orders the guides to go faster, and the carriage drives up to an expensive castle with an amazing garden and a fountain covered with snow. In one of the rooms of the castle, there were two people, an expensively dressed man sitting at an office desk and his servant standing next to him with papers. The latter notices a carriage with the great magician arriving in the window and informs his master about it. The latter notes that the magician has returned earlier than he expected. While shuffling through papers at the table, the gentleman complains that he is personally investigating the death of his daughter Gloria, although it is already being investigated. The servant, in turn, reports another piece of news. The magician Solon did not arrive alone. The gentleman wanted to ask him again, but everything was interrupted by a sharp cry, like a father calling out to his son, because his granddaughter was about to die. At first, the master did not believe his father's words about his granddaughter, so the servant explained to him that Solon had only one heir, Ariadne Eldir. The son of the great magician refuses to believe that his father brought his granddaughter with him, because he doesn't need anyone but him. But suddenly he starts to wind himself up that his father forcibly took his daughter away from her father, as a result of which he went completely crazy. The magician's son immediately gets up from his chair, throws his cloak over his back, and hurries to his father. The girl, meanwhile, regains consciousness in a room that is completely unfamiliar to her, which at first greatly surprises her. She guesses that she passed out in the carriage. Trying to remember how long she slept, she rises from the bed. One of the maids comes into the room with a towel in her hands and a basket in her hands. She is glad that the lady has woken up. Ariadne, due to her condition, does not pay attention to her. Instead, she tries to get out of bed, which she fails to do, and she falls. But the clever servant holds her back, reminding her that she shouldn't overexert herself now. She puts Arya back on the bed, covers her up, and offers to light a fire so she doesn't catch a cold. But the girl doesn't seem to hear her words. She looks at her with mesmerizing eyes, wants to say something. The servant, still smiling, asks her again, thinking that the little lady needs something. At this moment, the girl realizes that no one has ever smiled at her in such a friendly way, because the Duke's servants don't even look her in the eye. Breaking her silence, the lady asks the servant what her name is, to which she, with a blush appearing on her cheeks, replies that her name is Lucy. The girl is once again surprised by the kindness directed at her, from which a thoughtful Lucy can be heard from her lips, to which the servant immediately responds with a blinding smile. Ariadne also begins to rejoice that at least someone is smiling at her. Lucy, noticing her mistress's smile, is glad that she feels in good health and admits that she was worried about her. But the smile on the girl's face instantly disappeared when she realized that she didn't remember how long she had slept. It is at this moment that the son of the great magician bursts into the room and shouts, asking if Ariadne has woken up. He was so interested in his question that he did not notice the doctor, who, cursing, was trying to squeeze into the room. The magician's son, noticing his angry mood, sarcastically lets the doctor pass, causing him to stumble. Finding himself in the room in front of the lady, the doctor first decides to introduce himself, smiling politely and adjusting his glasses. But the girl was not happy to see him. She recognized the doctor's coat and remembered that she had already seen it on another man who served her father. These memories make Arya shiver as if in the cold. Out of fear, she grabs the collar of the servant Lucy, but she says that everything is fine. It's just a doctor. The doctor notices the girl's primal fear, which is so terrifying that she doesn't want him to even come close to her. The girl cannot calm down despite Lucy's support. Arya understands that if she is sick, her father will not teach her lessons, but the doctor decides to calmly introduce himself. He is the Weaver's family doctor, Jalen Brown, but Arya can just call him Jalen. The girl's tension does not subside. Hearing the family's name, she understands that she is in the Weaver's house. She also says her name. The doctor says he is very pleased to meet her and asks if he could examine the young lady. Having calmed down a little, the girl asks Jalen how long she slept, to which he says that more than 10 days have passed. The doctor reminds that it is not advisable for Ariadne to move now, but she does not listen to him. She is thinking about her father, who is probably already worried about her. Arya remains nervous, but still raises her left hand for the doctor. He asks if she is right-handed. The girl agrees, after which the doctor begins the examination, promising to deal with it quickly. Already leaving the master's chambers, the doctor asks Solon's son whether he noticed Ariadne's fear, to which he thought that it was simply due to overwork. He also mentions that the great magician's granddaughter hated doctors as a child, but Jalen suspects something is wrong, because her fear was not about taking the medicine or the treatment process, but something more. The doctor is sure that Ariadne has other injuries because, being right-handed, she reflexively stretched her left one, which means she never showed the right one to the doctors. The doctor mentions the girl's scratched arm, which they found when she arrived at the palace, and concludes that she has learned to hide her injuries. Ariadne's uncle asks who dared to inflict such wounds, to which Jalen gives an obvious answer. Without the Duke's knowledge, it is impossible to inflict wounds all over Arya's body and cause intestinal diseases. The doctor's skin crawled from the following guesses. Perhaps Ariadne Eldir was tortured. The doctor admits that he considered the marriage of the Duke and Duchess to be very happy, and that with such parents, Arya will also be happy. There were rumors that the Duke doted on his wife and daughter, which apparently turned out to be completely untrue. Suddenly, Solana's son enters the room with the little lady and asks Lucy to leave them alone. Watching the man escort the servant out of the room, the girl guessed that he was her uncle. The girl noticed his anger and suggested what would have happened if her mother, who was pregnant with her, had stayed with her family. But before Uncle Ernest Weaver had time to approach his niece, she kindly apologized for disturbing him and thanked him for the warm welcome. But suddenly Ernest frowned and said that she was acting too mature for her age. Arya, who had not expected this, began to worry a lot, saying that she had gone too far and that her uncle would want to send her home. She apologized. The man, sitting down next to his niece, says that she has nothing to apologize for, and on the contrary, he should do it. The girl listens to Ernest's next words almost with her mouth open. He regrets that he did not know about her condition and promises that he will not let anyone hurt her again. The uncle strokes his niece's head. The girl is charmed by the man's kindness. He adds that she can simply call him Uncle. Ernest then says that from now on, this is her room, and she can stay in it as long as she wants. The girl, perplexed, asks again, to which he apologizes that the room is prepared too simply for such a luxurious guest. But then the girl says the opposite. She likes everything very much. Her previous room was much smaller and had no windows. The last words of his daughter made Ernest think. In the background, he also remembers his niece's flashy clothes, the countless wounds on her body. The man concludes that Ariadne had never lived the luxurious life of an ordinary princess before, which makes him angry at the Duke. At this moment, without noticing it, Ernest begins to show his spiritual strength. This power sent a chill through the girl. She remembers that her uncle is an elemental knight, and this is what his power looks like. Ariadne had read about it in a novel, but seeing and feeling such magic was something completely different. The girl begins to freeze. She does not understand the reason for her uncle's thoughtfulness, because it is in this state that the knight's spiritual strength usually breaks out. Shaking his head, the uncle returned to his conversation with his niece. He was glad she liked the room. Ernest covers the girl with a blanket and tells her that she needs to lie down to get better. But Arya is in no hurry to pack. She is tormented by the question she asks the man. Why doesn't he ask her about anything? Ernest, with a smile on his face, replies that he doesn't want to stir up her bad memories and that she can tell him everything when she's ready. The girl watched her uncle leave and did not understand why everything was so simple, because in the novel, he and Sir Weaver were not indifferent either. She assumes that they care because of her blood and decides to first find out what family is. Remembering her father, Ariadne claims that family is an illusion, where everyone will love you because of blood ties. The girl falls into sadness because she realizes that the same thing is happening in her past life and in this one. And no matter how much she suffers, the Duke will not abandon her. Then the girl remembers the elixir of Glomus, which can cleanse the body and make anyone an elementalist. The catch is that he can't get it without Ariadne. That's why the Duke needs his own daughter so much. As she goes to bed, the girl realizes that she must rely only on herself, casting aside sympathy and conscience. Arya falls asleep. Dreams take Ariadne to a library where a little girl is reading among stacks of books. Suddenly, noticing Arya, she extends her hand to her and, smiling brightly, calls her to follow her. Arya and this girl, surrounded by books, are greeted like old acquaintances. Unperturbed, Ariadne asks her friend how long she waited for her. She, in turn, not seeing a smile on the lady's face, asks if she is sick and if the last lesson was difficult for her. Arya, laughing, replies that if she were sick, she would not have come to this library. The girl who is so happy about the arrival of the Duke's daughter is the guardian spirit of the library. Her name is Pi. Arya suggests that Pi was born with the library. She could read, but she couldn't speak. But thanks to the lessons the princess gave her, she learned to pronounce some words. Ariadne also suggests that she took all her memories from her past life. And since that one didn't have a name, the girl came up with her own, using the number pi. Arya admits that her body endured unbearable pain during special classes. But she was able to hold on thanks to Pi, who was always happy to see her. Stroking her friend on the head, the princess asks if she took good care of the things she gave her. Pi says that she hid them well, and then, at Arya's request, she runs to get them. These things turned out to be 2 vials with yellow and red liquid, which end up in Ariadne's hands. While looking at the potions, Arya notices that the library is a safe hiding place and was able to stealthily take these bottles when she ran away from her father. Time passes. The girl, in Lucy's company, listens to her consolation that she is glad of her recovery and the fact that she can dine with Sir. The servant then switches to the princess's appearance and apologizes, saying that she picked something too old, to which Arya says that everything is fine. The girl is spinning in front of a mirror with a dress that was most likely her mother's childhood dress. Walking with the servant, Arya feels strange wearing her mother's dress and walking up the stairs that her mother used to run up as a child. She realizes that in both this life and her past life, she lost her mother very early, which saddens her. Finally, Lucy brings the princess to Uncle Ernest, who, upon seeing his niece, became gloomier than a thundercloud. The man walked on, promising to hire a seamstress to sew new dresses. The girl was frightened and thought that he did not like the look of her mother's dress on her and she herself, who did not look like her mother at all. But the reality turned out to be completely different. Her uncle could barely hold back his tears from the beauty of her dress and was very delighted with how it suited her. Approaching the table, the uncle reflects that, in fact, the father even begrudged good clothes for his daughter and decides that he himself will give her the best. While wondering which fur would suit her best, Ernest notices his niece, who sits down at the other end of the table, where her face is not even visible. He roughly orders Arya's seat to be moved closer to him. The servants immediately carry out the order. The girl, who is wary of her uncle's anger, moves closer and begins to eat. While chewing her food, the girl thinks about how to avoid trouble, and about the fact that in the future they will have to talk about something. Ernest, watching his niece, is delighted by how cutely she eats. Suddenly, the servant reminds the master to control himself and not to strain himself. The man relaxes and agrees with the servant. There is no need to overload Ariadne. He will protect her health at any cost, becoming like a hero to her. But Ernest was so immersed in his fantasies that the emotion on his face turned into a terrifying one. This greatly frightened the girl, which the servant tries to correct by whispering words to his uncle. Ariadne is distracted by another servant who, smiling tenderly at her, brings her the second course. At this moment, the girl looks around and notices that absolutely all the servants are smiling at her. She compares them to the workers in her palace and realizes that only the Duke smiled at her. Arya is once again overcome with sadness. Remembering her past life, she realizes that no one smiled at her sincerely, and no one favored her. The girl has lost her appetite. She puts down her spoon, thinking that she doesn't want to go home and needs to make a deal as soon as possible. With a particularly serious expression on her face, she addresses her uncle and says that she has something to show him. And it is very important. But Ernest almost missed her words, worrying more about whether she had eaten well and kindly wiping her lips with a napkin. The girl, in a dull mood, apologizes for not following the rules of etiquette properly. The man laughs in response. She has nothing to apologize for because she is 7, not 17, and that's normal. Arya, afraid that she is about to be thrown out of the palace, decides to act. She asks her uncle to call the great mage. When asked why, she says that she is going to tell what her father did to her. Ernest went to meet the girl. He asked the servant to call Grandfather Solon to him, but he politely reminds the gentleman that the magician has not left the Western Tower for several days. Remembering the old man's stubbornness, Ernest sets a fake condition that if he does not show up immediately, he will send Arya home. The servant goes to carry out the order. 5 minutes later, Ernest's joke has caused such emotions in Salon that he bursts into the room, opening the door with his foot. The great magician grabs his son by the collar and threatens that he may die at his hands, to which Ernest does not seem even surprised. Suddenly, Solon notices Ariadne, who has been watching them the whole time, and cools down. The magician's son, taking advantage of his silence, decides to pour out his dissatisfaction on him for the fact that he is always hiding in his tower and does not see his granddaughter. Arya decides that Solon doesn't visit her because he finds her disgusting, so she apologizes and admits that she wants to tell him something. But before the great mage had time to feel sorry for Arya, he noticed a mysterious bottle of liquid in her hand. The girl, who sat down opposite the men with 2 bottles of liquid in her hands, says that she will now show them how to get rid of dirt. The moment Arya opened the bottle with the red liquid, the hands of the old man and his son immediately reached out to her, asking her not to do this, but she ignored them. With complete composure on her face, the princess poured the liquid onto her hand, causing the skin to turn red, as if from a burn. Solon and Ernest were horrified. The latter, with the sword in his hands, was already thinking that it would be better to cut off the girl's hand quickly so that the contamination would not infect the whole body. Suddenly, Arya, with the same calmness, says that there is nothing to worry about. She will not die. She pours yellow liquid from another vial onto her hand, after which all the wounds on her skin are healed. The men's faces show surprise. The girl adds that it is a special elixir that removes impurities. Ariadne eventually confesses that this is the experiment the Duke conducted on her. The grandfather rushed to examine the girl's palm, and Ernest asked his niece again because he couldn't believe it. The girl tells the truth, which makes him drop his sword on the floor. Her father injected her with essence, then elixir, and watched what happened. Arya brings the scars on her hand as proof. In the background, Ernest recalls his conversation with the doctor, who had already admitted the possibility that she was infected with poison. Uncle realizes that if this really turns out to be the case, then Ariadne does not have long to live. From his niece, he learns that the Duke had been experimenting on her since she was 4 years old. At that age, he learned of her good compatibility with the elements. Arya gives the saddened grandfather a jar of elixir in exchange for saving her, and if he listens to her request, he promises to make a new one. Solon asks his granddaughter again, and she adds that this is like poison, and no one except her can withstand it. The girl says that the manufacturing process is complicated, but she can handle it if she has the right ingredients. Ariadne repeats the condition. They must protect her until she becomes an adult. She says she does not want to return to Eldir. The men fell silent, feeling the weight of guilt for what Arya had to endure. The girl became worried when she heard silence in response. She decides to tell them about the benefits they would get if they left her. Ernest takes the essence from Arya and asks if this is all the liquid she has. The girl does not understand the question and says that she can show again how it works. Ernest shouts a categorical no, because she had experienced terrible things. It was very painful for her. Ariadne does not understand the reason for their sad faces and expresses her understanding that they will have to make a difficult decision, to which the uncle says that she has nothing to worry about. He supports his niece but breaks off at the word, after which he leaves the room. At this moment, Grandfather Solon, sitting down next to her, addresses the girl. He asks Ariadne if she has feelings of hatred towards him, which the princess denies. The great magician adds that he hates himself even for the fact that all this time he did not even suspect what was happening to his beloved granddaughter. The girl says that the grandfather is not guilty because he did not know about anything, to which he says that he should have guessed. At this time, Ernest is examining some papers with the butler behind the door. Solon says he can't consider himself a real grandfather if he hasn't heard any news from his own granddaughter. Ariadne, meanwhile, remembers a novel in which her grandfather didn't care about her, which is why she doesn't understand the sadness on his face. Ernest returns to the couple and shows them a document, which is an official contract that he signed. The contract contains clauses under which she can always count on the support of her uncle and grandfather and live in their palace. All she has to do is sign it. The girl notices the space left at the bottom and guesses that she needs to write her part of the obligations there. Ernest says that she doesn't have to write anything there, which Arya doesn't understand, since there won't be any benefit from her for them. She reminds her uncle about the elixir that can bring them huge amounts of money. In response, Arya hears words that warm her heart. He doesn't need the elixir. His goal is to become a real uncle for the girl. Ariadne leaves the room with the contract in her hands. There is no trace of her sadness left. Left alone, the great mage praises his son that thanks to the contract, Arya will now feel more confident. In response, Ernest asks his father if he noticed the joy of relief in his granddaughter when she signed the contract. Sitting opposite Solan, the son listens to the magician's memories of how Arya clung to him with a request in Eldia. The grandfather admits that he has never heard such a desperate plea in his life and regrets that he did not come earlier. His thoughts were interrupted by his son's words that he would prepare for the coming battle. After asking him again, Ernest, whose face instantly darkened, promises to repay the Duke for all of Ariadne's suffering. He goes on to say that he will quickly gather knights and that the Elder Knights are nothing compared to their snow leopard knights. Suddenly, Solon calls out to Ernest in a stern voice. Ernest, alert, listens to his father. The only thing that came from the father was that he did not want his son to get involved in politics, which puzzled Ernest. Then the great mage asks who he is to him. He, perplexed, gives the most obvious answer. His father. But Solon says that he doesn't mean that. And as if with fire in his mouth, he reminds that he is the former teacher of the court magician, the great magician of the Magic Tower, and now a member of the consulate of the imperial family. The father arranges a whole test for his son. When asked who will suffer more if the labyrinth's control ceases, the answer is the Empire. When asked where the Weavers get their main income, the son replies that it comes from the kingdom of Duradot. When asked where the gold mines of Eldir are, he names one place, Garcia. To the next question, where is the source of the river Luma, which feeds Eldir, Ernest names Kazelas. And to the final question, what is the name of his wife, the son, not understanding what this means, says, Ciliana Kazelas. Solon scolds his son and asks if he understood his train of thought, to which he does not answer. While Ernest digests everything she told him, grandfather concludes that he can only trust Silly. He promises to take care of Arya and begin an investigation. The son asks if his father is referring to the investigation of the experiments that were conducted on Ariadne. He confirms this and asks to check everything. Father also asks to find out about the accident with Gloria. Ernest wants to make a suggestion, which plunges him into memories about his sister. He remembers the accident that happened at a horse grave near the Duchy of Eldir last year. Gloria was leading the cleanup team. Her Knights of the Golden Horn should have an easy time of it. However, as soon as she entered there first, signs of contamination immediately appeared and she died. Ernest gloomily says that this is something everyone knows and asks if his father noticed anything strange. He assures that everything is clean, but this essence will be enough to test for poisons. Picking up an empty bottle from the floor, Solon says that its quantity does not matter. The symptoms appear immediately. Looking ominously into the container, the grandfather concludes that it was the Duke who could have surreptitiously infected Gloria and killed her. Ernest, in turn, says that he himself is not sure, but it is worth checking the pollution process. Just as he was about to leave the room, Solon remembered that he forgot to tell his son something. Turning back to Ernest, he sternly tells him that he forbids him from engaging in politics, and then leaves. Meanwhile, Ariadne in her room can't stop admiring her contract. She never even thought that they would offer her something like this. And even when it came to the elixir, they didn't behave the way she expected. The girl is happy that everything went well and remembers how her grandfather and uncle treated her. She wonders if Solon and Ernest's kindness was truly sincere. Arya compares their warm gaze to the look her mother gave her when she tried to save her from the schoolroom. Feeling sad, she hopes that one day she will be able to feel a real family. Some time passes. In the garden at the palace, red rose petals that have grown there are flying. Ariadne, being in her uncle's arms, says that she can walk and he does not need to carry her. But Ernest doesn't think of letting her go and asks her to imagine that she is simply on a horse. At first, Arya is alarmed by his joy, because he is very rude to others. But then her uncle switches her thoughts to something else. They come to the greenhouse that Ernest's grandfather built for his grandmother. Walking along it, the man says that his grandmother bewitched it so that he could walk here as a child. And every time there was a snowstorm, they came here, and when spring came, they swam in the lake nearby. Suddenly, the girl decides to tell Ernest that a magician is watching them all the time, hiding behind them. He says that he knows about him and asks his niece not to pay attention to him. Solon, realizing that he had been noticed, decided to escape from the greenhouse before it was too late. Looking out the window into the raging snowstorm, Ariadne asks when it will end. Ernest, plucking a red rosebud, says that it will stop blooming when spring comes. And he adds that with the arrival of spring, the main character's aunt and cousin will come to visit them. From the novel, the girl remembers the name of her brother. Eric Weaver is a brilliant senior archmage, a friend of Axel Valentine, the main character of the novel. She also understands that this man is needed to change the ending of the story because he often argued with the main character. She decides that she must gain his trust, so she must quickly prepare the elixir. The girl is so lost in her thoughts that she does not notice the flower that Ernest has pinned near her face. Deciding that the girl was afraid of the arrival of new people, the uncle promises her that they will like her very much. Suddenly, an almost fantastic phenomenon attracted the attention and glances of all the servants. Their previously very formidable master smiles as he walks down the corridor with his niece in his arms, who, however, asks him to let her go. Uncle brings the baby to her room and reminds her to take care of her health and that she can always count on him. Suddenly, a servant calls out to Ernest, causing the previous smile to instantly disappear from his face. He informs the gentleman about a certain guest who has arrived at such a late hour. The uncle tells his niece to stay in the room and promises to return soon. The girl was about to close the door, but accidentally overheard what the two men were talking about. Ernest and the servant talked about a certain elixir who came without warning. Hearing the last name, the girl panics, assuming that her father has come for her. Arya peers through the window at the arriving carriage. She can't believe that the Duke has arrived for her so quickly, but she is encouraged by the signed contract. Thanks to it, the girl hopes that everything will be fine. Sir Weaver is kindly introduced to Rictus Belbarda, a girl who occupies a special position among the Knights of the Golden Horn. He says with not much admiration on his face that she is too modest for an elemental knight. The girl pays tribute to Ernest's observation as the shield of the entire North. He is in no hurry to smile back at Rictus and asks if she was tired on the way here. The girl, handing the man a letter from the Duke, answers the question by saying that she was afraid of getting into trouble because of the snowstorm. From the letter, Weaver learns not the best news. The girl's father has sent servants, knights, and doctors from the palace to help the lady. Ernest crumpled the letter, threw it at the girl's feet, and said that there was no need for it. Rictus expresses regret and says that the Duke still ordered them not to leave the lady's side for a single step. The girl asks about Arya's location, to which the uncle tells them not to worry and to go back. However, she insists on her own. Ernest begins to be dissatisfied with what is happening, and Rictus says that he is behaving strangely. She begins to suspect that something is wrong with Sir Weaver, as if there is a special reason why they are forbidden to see the girl. As a result, she suggests that Ernest is keeping the girl captive, which he categorically denies. Rictus wanted to ask him something else, but after his shout about ending the conversation, the Weaver Knights burst into the room. They grabbed the girl who was shouting promises of revenge for Ariadne to Ernest. Sir meanwhile ordered to also seize all the people of Eldir who remained outside and to properly greet them according to the traditions of the Weaver. Meanwhile, Ariadne is having a wonderful time with Pi in the Library of Memories. She treated her friend to sweets, which she really liked. Arya promises to bring more next time. Arya feels safe around P. She was scared when she heard that people from Eldir had come. While her friend is eating, the little lady is looking for information about Eric Weaver in the book. She manages to find his first mention in the novel. She reads the text more carefully. At that moment, Pi suddenly grabs Ariadne by the hand and screams that she is in danger and needs to leave immediately. The princess asks if she can see what's going on outside the library, to which she replies that she can only feel it. By magical means, Pi makes Ariadne return back to the real world. The girl wakes up on her bed. She is surprised that her friend can throw her out of space herself. Arya sits up in bed and notices that it is already getting dark outside. She doesn't understand why no one woke her up for dinner. Ariadne decided to walk around the room, playing Pi's strange words about danger in her head. A sudden picture terrified her. The darkness outside the window was caused by a huge shadow from a giant eagle that was flying straight into her window. The window breaks and an impressive bird and its rider burst into the princess's room. Shielding herself from the fragments, the girl notices a familiar symbol on the rider's armor. She understands that this is the Knight of the Golden Horn, one of those who came for her. But it is not clear for what purpose. He gets down from his mount and tells Arya that he will save her and bring her home. The girl begins to panic. She says that she does not want to return to Eldir Castle. He didn't expect such an answer and says that in that case he will take her by force, which frightens Arya even more. A sudden bolt of magical lightning made the man pull his hand away from the princess. The great mage appeared in the room. He was furious that he dared to touch his beloved granddaughter. Arya hides behind her grandfather, and the knight, feeling the power of magic, says that he does not want to fight Solon. Instead, he democratically offers to give him the girl without a fight. Solon says that he doesn't even understand yet what a powerful force he possesses, and suggests that the guy leave without losses and without the lady. However, the cunning knight says that he shouldn't underestimate him either. Suddenly, he throws up a bottle with that same red liquid. Then, using magic, he smashes it in the air. The essence of pollution pours like rain throughout the room. At the moment when the red drops did not even fall to the floor, the girl, realizing that the essence could not be stopped by ordinary magic, stood up to her grandfather. But Solon turned out to be smarter. He protected his granddaughter from the drops by covering her with the sleeve of his cloak. Having advised the robber to read books about his heroic battles, the great mage decides to attack. The magical lightning hit the bull's eye. The knight, not expecting the blow, groaned in pain. But unexpectedly for Solon, the enemy quickly saddled his eagle and cowardly flew away. Once the danger has passed, Solon furiously asks his granddaughter a rhetorical question whether she even has a sense of fear. He yells at Arya for pushing herself ahead of him without even thinking about her health. The girl tries to justify her actions. She would not have suffered from such a thing, unlike the magician, but Grandpa insists. He says that Arya should never have protected him. Sitting on his granddaughter's lap and hugging her warmly, Solon says that, on the contrary, he should do it. The great magician is unable to hold back his tears. He persuades Ariadne not to try to save him anymore, and promises to punish her for such behavior. The girl doesn't seem to hear her words because she feels a rare feeling for her, the warmth in her grandfather's arms. Arya walks down the palace corridor in her grandfather's arms. Solon tells her that she has nothing to worry about, and that she can be sure of her nasty uncle's strength. The magician tells Ariadne that they treated the guests from Eldir in the best weaver traditions. Having inquired about these traditions, the girl learns their essence. Ernest crippled all of the Duke's messengers except one, so that someone could carry the wounded home. Not expecting such a good turn of events, the girl asks her grandfather if everything will be okay, which he happily confirms. Arya remembers that in the novel, it is written that Eldir is a very powerful and rich family. She begins to worry about the consequences. She warns her grandfather that her dad will be very angry, which he doesn't care about at all. He decides to explain to his granddaughter, the Eldir family is just a little richer, that's all. As Arya walks further down the hallway, she remembers that Eric's father is rarely seen in the novel. She even imagined that the Weaver family was that strong. On their way, they meet Ernest, who is immediately attacked by his grandfather with comments about how he could let these rats into the estate. Already tired of his son's stupidity, the magician says he can't wait for his wife Celiana to return. Ernest complains that he trusts her more than his son. Twirling his finger in front of him, Grandfather Solon asks his son if he ever conquered his wife. The great mage reminds Ernest that he fought her 289 times and always lost. He is angered by his grandfather's words. The man justifies himself by saying that it is all because of his character, and if he wants, he can easily win her over. He reached out his hand to the girl, hoping to stroke her, but Solon pulled it away. Ernest just wanted to take Arya in his arms, but his grandfather didn't let him, because he was always walking with her. The grandfather reminds his granddaughter not to worry about them and says that children like her should not have such sad faces. Solon cheerfully tosses Ariadne into the air, saying that she just needs to be a child. However, these words plunged the girl into dark memories, where people said that she did not look like a child at all. She also remembers Ernest's words, where he reminds her that she is only 7, not 17. Arya understands that in the novel she is a child who is destined to die anyway, but now that she has remembered her life, she has a small chance to live. Her unwillingness to surrender to death has given rise to these memories, so she cannot be a simple child. She will have to act carefully. Arya also reasons that she is still a child, and she will always need people's help and wait for their sincerity. The girl admits that sometimes she hates herself for her constant wariness. At this point, she decides to apologize to the men for not acting like a carefree child. But Ernest says that she has been through things that are not childish at all, and that is why she acts so mature. He adds that her behavior is the fault of adults, and it is not her fault that her childhood was taken away from her. Solon supports his son. He says that they in no way blame her for this. The girl hears words that are surprising to her. The grandfather becomes sad when he sees that his granddaughter copes with everything on her own. She asks her grandfather again, and he not only confirms, but also says that he considers Ariadne part of his family. At that moment, the words of her uncle and grandfather sounded so warm to her that she felt that she could escape from her previous loneliness. Bursting into tears, the girl asks the men if she can really trust them and count on them. Hugging the little princess, Solon and Ernest give their absolute consent to her question. The girl begins to cry even louder when she realizes that she can stay here forever and call Solon simply grandfather. Choking on tears of joy, the girl finally calls the great mage grandfather. Ernest, hearing this, also wanted the girl to call him by his marital status. Solon wanted to make fun of him and leave before the girl could say it for him too. But at the last moment, when they had already started to leave, the girl called out to him through tears, "Uncle." Meanwhile, things are going badly for Arya's father. He is furious that he was unable to get his daughter back, but he does not think of giving up. With a terrifying smile on his face, the Duke promises that he will definitely return his daughter back. In the middle of a clear winter day, cheerful Ariadne runs out into Ernest's yard, after which they hold hands. The uncle says that it is cold outside and she can wait inside, but the girl says that she wants to meet her aunt and brother with him. Suddenly, maids from the palace rush at Arya, bringing her gloves, worrying about her red nose, and offering the lady a hot water bottle. Lucy is worried about her lady catching a cold and tells Weaver that she needs to be kept an eye on. Ernest, scratching his neck, saw his beautiful niece collected and decided that it was time to go. The servants, as if tearing their hearts away, bitterly said goodbye to their princess. The girl thinks that they are too worried. Suddenly, Ernest stops and asks Ariadne to also take a step back. At this moment, the uncle uses his magic power, and after the word blizzard, a huge magic leopard appeared in front of them. The girl guesses that this is her uncle's contract animal, which should not be confused with an ordinary animal. Magic with form. Sometimes wizards can make contracts with spirit animals. Such animals are intelligent and use the power of a great spirit. Looking at this miracle, Ariadne wonders if she will ever meet a great spirit in her life. The girl remembered the great guardian spirit of the Weaver family, but at that moment her uncle called her to him. Ernest sat the princess next to him on the leopard, and together they rushed towards the gate. Approaching them, Ernest says that they are about to jump over them and reminds the girl to hold on tighter. In 2 movements, the leopard deftly climbed to the height. Uncle says with relief that they made it in time. Taking a closer look, Arya notices some strange movement on the road in the distance. The girl recognizes them as the Snow Leopard Knights, who are riding home on different spirit animals. The guard shouted out about the return of the conquering squad, after which the gate door opened. The leopard jumped to the ground where Ernest meets his friend, Veronica Bronte, the Knight of the Snow Leopard. He notices her unkempt appearance, and she admits that she has gotten herself into the thick of things again. The man makes a remark to her about the blood on her clothes that should have been washed off, to which Veronica replies that she forgot. Suddenly, she notices a child next to Ernest, and he says that she is his niece and that she should be careful with her words. Veronica is surprised because she didn't know that he had a niece. Ernest is surprised because he wrote about it in letters. Ariadne Eldir is afraid of Veronica, but she, without noticing this, reaches out to her to get to know her, which Ernest forbids her to do. Suddenly, the love of his life, Celiana Kizalas, runs up to his uncle and asks if he misses her. Jumping off his leopard, Ernest threw himself into the arms of his wife, which not everyone likes to see. They are noticed by Eric Weaver, the uncle's son who is studying to be a magician. He expresses displeasure that his parents are exchanging affection like newlyweds. His displeasure became even greater when he saw that his parents were about to kiss. He thanks God that his parents didn't give him a brother or sister, when he suddenly notices Ariadne sitting on her father's leopard. Arya silently looks at Eric and notices that for his 16 years of age, he looks younger than in the drawings in the novel. Veronica, noticing the girl's face, is touched by her, which Eric does not understand. He asks his friend if Arya is cute just because she is small, to which she confirms. Suddenly, Eric says that the princess is disgusting because her huge eyes make him feel like he is looking at a naked skull. Veronica returns his words like a boomerang. She says that he is not nice, but nasty. Eric immediately began to prove her wrong and boast about himself, to which she still said the same thing as before. Ernest's son is indignant that she cannot say such things about her future count, to which Veronica says that if he becomes one, he will leave here. Her next words came as a bolt from the blue to Eric. He looked like a cow, but Veronica managed to gallop away on her horse before Eric could take revenge on her. He turns his attention to Arya. He doesn't like the way she looks down on him. The girl became worried when Eric began to say that she had no right to sit on her father's snow leopard. He roughly grabbed Ariadne by the hand and tried to throw her off the magical animal. Ernest stops his son's impudent behavior in time, after which he leaves the little lady alone. Eric observes a strange picture. His father is concerned about the hand of some girl unknown to him. Noticing a scratch on Arya's hand, Ernest tells his wife that he will return to the palace first. Celiana decides to postpone her acquaintance with her husband's niece. As Arya and her uncle walk away from Eric, who is being scolded by his mother, she thinks that he seems even more relaxed now than in the novel. She thinks about talking to him. Sometime later, Arya, accompanied by a servant, walks down the corridor, scolding Eric for his bad behavior with the princess. Suddenly, the girl remembers the night girl Veronica and decides to ask Lucy about her. The servant told her that Veronica and Eric are the same age, and she became a knight at 14. She appeared in the yard 2 years ago. They say that she is strong beyond her years. Aria compares Veronica to the main character of the novel, who became a knight at 12, and concludes that she is clearly a genius. However, the girl is tormented by one question. Why is Veronica not mentioned anywhere in the novel? She doesn't think she's like Ariadne from the novel and assumes she died at the beginning. Arya remembers the argument between Veronica and Eric when she was riding the leopard. The girl remembers. In the novel, every time Eric got drunk, he muttered words from this argument. Based on these factors, Ariadne makes the assumption that Veronica is his deceased lover. Since ancient times, labyrinths inhabited by monsters have appeared everywhere. But people did not give up and continued to fight. Just one labyrinth, which appeared several decades ago, changed everything. It completely erased the Great Empire. Axel Valentine is a ray of hope. He managed to survive in the labyrinth and set himself the goal of destroying it. He created his own squad for this mission, which should include 5 people: a warlock, a magician, a priest, a witch, and an elemental knight. Almost nothing is written about the roles of the priest and the knight, as well as about Veronica. But Arya is sure that she is the very talent that will take the place of the knight and decides to find out more about her. The princess was brought out of her thoughts when Lucy led her to a room and told her to enter it. In it, Ariadne meets her aunt, Celiana Kizelas, who is very happy to meet her. Celiana laughed when the duke's daughter bowed to her, calling her madame and telling her that she could just call her aunt. The girl admits that she did not receive a letter from her husband because it was lost along the way, but she still learned the story of her niece. She praises Arya for her bravery, as even the most trained knights could not have gone that far. The princess is pleasantly surprised by her aunt's next words. Celiana says that she looks like a warrior. The girl asks again in bewilderment. The aunt adds that warriors do not always carry weapons, and a person is considered a warrior when he fights for victory. Ernest believes that Arya is as fragile as steel, but Celiana, on the contrary, says that her body hides unprecedented power, and concludes that her niece is a very strong child. Weaver's wife remembers her son and feels sorry for him because he is not as good as Ariadne. Unexpectedly, Celiana hands the girl a small gift since she recently had a birthday. Inside the box, Arya discovers a small magic lamp. Her aunt asks if she has ever had one, but Celiana did not expect to hear a negative answer from her niece. Watching the cheerful Arya, the girl finds it strange that her parents have never given her a magic lamp, which is considered the norm in childhood. Celiana helps her niece put her first magic lamp around her neck. Next, patting the girl on the head, she praises her good work and how far she has come. The aunt says that soon the main character will get to know her grandfather and uncle better. They often come to her for advice on what she can do now. Arya asks her again if she will really help her, to which she confirms and says that it is their little secret. Some time passed. Arya walks in the garden, thinking about her aunt. She is glad that she was able to please her. Looking at the jar of elixir in her hand, the girl concludes that her relatives are good people, and thanks to her grandfather, she was able to finish the elixir. She quickly decides to test it. Looking at the flowers in the pots, Arya thinks about the meaning of being reborn as a child. The girl thinks she is cute, but too much like the Duke. She finds it absurd that the world of the novel she read is real. Arya also wonders about the identity of the author of the novel. Ariadne decides to shake her head and stop filling it with all sorts of nonsense. The girl stops to start searching for the elixir to use. She needs something small. She finds what she was looking for. Her eye falls on a dried plant in a pot. Arya approached them and, opening the vial of liquid, recognized dying plants. Daffodils. The princess pours the magic liquid onto the plant and watches what happens. Suddenly, the dying daffodils instantly came to life and blossomed, which made the girl very happy. But Eric, who had suddenly appeared from behind, asked with displeasure what the lady was doing. This made the girl turn around. Ariadne didn't expect to meet him here because she thought he was training. Despite this, she bowed cordially, calling him brother. But he was not happy with the girl's treatment, even though his father told him who Arya was to him. Eric states that even if she is his cousin, she does not dare to pretend that they are close. The girl does not understand his disrespectful behavior towards the child, which is what she asks him about. However, Eric decides not to answer the question and simply drive the little girl out of the garden, because this is not a place for games. Ariadne's next words greatly interested him. She says that her grandfather allowed her to walk here. Eric had some bad thoughts in his head. after which he furiously asked the girl if she was stealing the secrets of magic from the great mage. Ariadne calmly denies her guilt, while he continues to accuse her of stealing her grandfather's secret techniques. In her mind, Arya confirms the words from the novel that it is difficult to become a knight. She does not like Eric's behavior, but she still remains polite to him. She decides to reprimand Mr. Weaver so that he would be more polite to the Duke's heiress. Eric fell silent when he realized that Arya, although younger, was higher in caste. Meanwhile, the girl tormented him with questions about his ill-mannered behavior. Eventually, his patience snapped and he yelled at Arya to stop bullying him, causing her to smirk contentedly. Boiling with anger, Eric scares the girl that he will tell her father about her behavior, to which the girl repeats that she did not come here for magic or to become an elementary knight. In the end, Ariadne says that she came here for the sake of an experiment and leaves Eric alone with a lot of questions about it. He shouted for the lady to come back and tell about some experiment, but at that moment he noticed blooming daffodils that had previously been dead. Left alone, the girl begins to feel unwell because she has moved too much today. Suddenly, Eric catches up with her and grabs her by the shoulder, asking what she did with the daffodils. In bewilderment, Ariadne turns her head towards him, where he notices that she has a bloody nose and becomes frightened. The girl, wiping away the blood, says that she is relatively okay and it is not his fault. Arya wanted to say something else, but she fell unconscious to the ground where Eric caught her. Mr. Weaver notices the girl's elevated temperature and is horrified by the thought that she might die. The princess regains consciousness in the library, where Pi lays her down on the couch and strongly encourages her to rest. Arya asks her friend if she dragged her into the library by force, to which she replies that she only invited her. She is surprised by her abilities. The girl wanted to ask how she did it, but she didn't have time, because she was very tired and fell asleep. Ariadne wakes up in her room surrounded by her family. Ernest can't hold back his tears as his niece regains consciousness. The doctor thanks the girl with the cross on her neck for her work and asks if he can approach the princess. She agrees. Ernest is taken away from the girl and a doctor approaches the girl instead. After examining her hand, the doctor says that she has almost recovered. The doctor adds that Arya can improve her health by doing sports exercises, but the girl does not notice it, because she feels greater lightness in her body. Ernest Weaver wholeheartedly embraces the girl with the cross and thanks her for her help. The girl says that it's all nonsense, and everything happened thanks to the gift of the gods. At this moment, the clever Arya notices the yellow eyes of that girl, and remembers that all priests have yellow eyes. Looking at the yellow-eyed girl and her uncle leaving, the girl remembers that all the eyes of all those with divine powers turn yellow with age. Celiana approaches Ariadne. She asks her niece if she feels confused, to which she answers yes. The aunt then says that she was unconscious for 2 days, and then asks Arya if she wants to eat. Suddenly, the princess also answered this question with consent, which made Celiana smile, and the servants hurried to set the table. The rainbow atmosphere is interrupted by the doctor, who wants to tell Ariadne something very important. Having captured the princess's attention, the doctor voices his assumption. It seems to him that the girl has lost her sense of pain. For Arya, he explains that what is unbearable for ordinary people is like a mosquito bite for her. The girl asked if this was good, to which the doctor replied that it was not. Although she did not feel pain, her body was still suffering. The doctor reminds her of the time when Mr. Eric wounded the princess, but she did not feel anything, despite the fact that the wound was bleeding. He also recalls a case where a lady needed to rest before a nosebleed, but she didn't feel the need. The girl's pain warns her of danger, but she does not feel it, which is very bad. As a result, the doctor recommends that Ariadne always monitor the condition of her body. The lady agrees, after which the man adds that she should feel better thanks to divine power. The girl, having heard the good news, asks if she can now walk anywhere, to which she hears a positive answer. The doctor says goodbye to the patient, and the aunt, stroking Arya on the head, congratulates her on her speedy recovery. It's time for breakfast. Celiana, with a bowl of soup in her hands, says that her son will think about his behavior. She feeds the princess with a spoon and promises to hire her a nightly guard so that no one can harm her. The girl wanted to ask again, but suddenly her aunt invited Veronica Bronte into the room. Celiana says that Veronica, although young, is quite strong. Then she asks the knight what she will do with Eric if he again offends Ariadne. Veronica scratches her head and hesitantly replies that she won't let the girl suffer because of him, to which Eric's mother says that she can beat him as much as she wants, just not break his bones, which shocks the little lady. The girl decides to ask about Eric. Was he scolded for making her faint? Celiana replies that he immediately ran to the doctor and admitted that it was all his fault. Arya, who didn't expect this from her cousin, says that it's not really his fault. Celiana says that Eric assumed that she would say this, and yet he admitted his guilt, which makes her very happy. After some time, Arya is busy in her office. She is preparing her homemade elixirs for her grandfather, uncle, and Eric. She still has 2 jars of elixir left, which she decides to give to Veronica and Pi. However, Arya thinks that this bottle will be useless for Pi, but she still decides to give her such a gift, which makes her very happy. The girl takes off the apron she was wearing and remembers that she asked Pi to find information about Veronica. She hopes that her friend will be able to find the information. Sitting down on the chair, she also decides to ask Pi one day about how she can transport her to the library. Thinking about her, Arya falls asleep, after which she is instantly transported to the Library of Memories. However, she does not find Pi next to her, who always, as soon as she appears, runs into her arms. Suddenly, Ariadne hears her voice coming from behind and calling her to her. Arriving at the sound, Arya is horrified to discover Pi, who wants to show her some of her finds, as if coming from another space. A library friend happily presents the lady with a book containing the information she was looking for. But the princess is interested in something else. She discovers another part of the library, which is behind glass. She asks Pi if she can go to that part, to which she says yes and is surprised that her friend can't. Pi decides to demonstrate his abilities to the princess. She passes through the glass without any problems and finds herself on the other side. Looking at the glass with interest, Ariadne asks why she didn't tell her before that she could do this. Pi climbs out of the glass and says that since she didn't ask, she didn't say anything. Arya decides that the library behind the wall is a stranger's memories and asks her friend if they are different from her library, to which Pi tells her that she is the only visitor here and there are no other people here except her. In an instant, the library keeper became sad from her loneliness, to which Arya said that she would try to come more often. But in another moment, Pi beams with joy and invites the princess to look at the book she found for her. While reading information about Veronica from the book, Ariadne's eye falls on the report of the battle in the labyrinth of La Matcha. The girl remembers that this is a labyrinth located in Weaver's domain. She reads the document. After the defeat, the defense was destroyed, as a result of which the monsters caused significant damage to the city. Veronica Bronte died at the age of 24 while protecting Eric Weaver from a monster called the Blood Hunter. The girl guesses that these events will happen in the future, but something doesn't add up. At this point, Pi says that she found all 10 volumes of the novel, but that name doesn't appear there, so she looked in other books. Arya senses something is wrong because her assistant found this not in the main novel and it is about the present, not about future events. Since the Library of Memories gives Pi access to her entire life without time limits, Arya assumes that she has access to any knowledge, which seems like a complete scam. Noticing the princess's silence, Pi became upset, saying that she had brought the wrong thing. But Arya slams the book shut and says everything is fine. The library keeper is happy about this. Then Ariadne, with particular seriousness in her voice, asks her for one more request, to find information about the death of Gloria Weaver. Pi happily accepts the princess's new assignment and throws himself into her arms. Unexpectedly, Arya tells her about her gift, which she hands to her friend. Pi is delighted to see her name on the ribbon of her first gift. She takes the ribbon off the jar and asks Ariadne to tie it on her head, to which she initially waves it off. But thanks to Pi Aries' persistence, she still had to tie her hair with this ribbon, which she really liked. Time passes. Veronica accepts a gift from Arya containing a potion that she can use when she is injured, for which she thanks her. However, the girl is interested in one question. Why did they, riding on her contract beast, climb onto the roof of the courtyard? Because the princess just wanted to meet her brother. Veronica admits that it is a little difficult for her to climb up the stairs to him, and the real reason was that she really wanted to hug Ariadne. Suddenly, the knight's horse breaks a tile with its hoof, which falls onto his brother's balcony. Noticing the fallen tile, the girl was upset that Eric would now complain about her again, which is what they heard a moment later from the enraged guy who had asked Veronica countless times to go up the stairs. Eric asked his friend to come down to the rooftops to him, but he was frightened by the horse that jumped right next to him. The girl calmly asks the young man what he is afraid of, since he himself asked to come down, but that Eric is complaining about her again because she scared him. Veronica ignores the guy as she lowers the little lady from the saddle. At one point, Eric notices Arya, who came to him with the knight, and states how she could bring this girl with her, calling her a brat. Suddenly, the girl grabs him by the collar because he does not dare to call Ariadne Skull because of her big eyes. Eric continues to say that such a nickname is very suitable for a little lady. Arya wanted to hush up the argument and asked her guard to let her brother go, but she took it too literally and almost threw the offender over the balcony. The girl clarified that Veronica simply needed to put him in his place, thanks to which he remained unhappy but unharmed. Then Eric accepts the gift from Arya and asks if this is the very experiment she was talking about. The princess says he can ask his grandfather for details. Weaver notices his name on the ribbon, which pleases him greatly. Suddenly, Arya decides to apologize to her brother because she fainted not because of him, and he took responsibility. The girl also suggests that Eric doesn't hate her, to which he flares up again with displeasure. Veronica grabbed the young man by the collar again and reminded him to watch his words. Sir Eric loses his patience and leaves the girls. Arya thinks of him as strange, but not so bad. Veronica decides to cheer up the little lady and tells her not to be offended by him, and that he does not deserve her gifts. But suddenly, Ariadne, with a beaming smile, says that she doesn't regret anything and believes that she did everything right. After some time, the princess spends time with her uncle and aunt at a delicious table in the greenhouse. They admire her elixir, which can heal all living things. Celiana decides to ask her niece if her potion can heal the polluted land once they clear the labyrinth. Ernest says that the elixir can only heal living entities, but that his wife claims that the soil can also be both living and dead. After Celiana's words, Weaver became lost in thought, and Arya replied that she didn't know and that it needed to be checked. Arya herself recalls that the elixir on the soil really works, and when she saw this in the book, the information was very accurate, which is quite strange. Looking at the jar of potion, Ernest says that if the elixir is effective, then it should be made in larger quantities. Suddenly, Arya insistently asks them to keep information about him a secret. Otherwise, there will be problems in relations with the temple. In response, the aunt asks the girl how they can then distribute the elixir. Ariadne comes up with her own idea. They will launch it on the black market, and when word gets out, they will publicly donate the recipe to the temple. A snow-white postal eagle flies to the window with a letter tied to its leg. The letter about the idea of distributing the elixir on the black market is read by the great mage. He asks the opinion of a luxuriously dressed young lady who is sitting next to him on the sofa and smoking tobacco. This beautiful lady's name is Rebecca Garcia. She is the second child of Solana and the owner of the Garcia house. Hey, the idea of a princess seems good. A few years ago, after the Great Labyrinth appeared, the Garcia homestead disappeared. Rebecca had a hard time finding a new home for the Garcias. She is the heiress of a father who is not interested in money and power, and therefore currently has unimaginable wealth. The girl asks about the money, to which Solon reads her Arya's words from the letter. She claims that if this elixir proves useful to the world, then she is ready to give it away without any payment in return. Rebecca asks if Arya is going to give the potion recipe to the temple, to which her grandfather says that she just wants to make it. Arya speculates that by giving the recipe to the temple, we will gain their favor and increase their reputation. She will also make it in large quantities. This will be a new recipe for the temple, which will take time to learn. They will easily take over the market. It's hard to buy something on the black market, and the temple doesn't approve of it. So when they release the elixir for sale, it'll sell like hotcakes. Rebecca guesses that the donation will let everyone know that the recipe was created by Arya, and the trade will go without competition, which will bring profit. Admiring the girl's genius, she asks her father about her age, to which Solon is surprised why she doesn't know how old his granddaughter is. Rebecca snapped her finger and called out to Potern, who obediently replied that Ariadne had turned 8 this year. Hearing such a small number in response, the girl rushed to beg her father to allow her to see her and make her his successor. Solon gave her a categorical refusal because Ariadne is the direct heir of Duke Eldir. Rebecca flopped back onto the couch, disappointed. She says there's no other choice, but she can't give up on distributing the elixir. Grandfather replies that it is not up to them to decide, and he only came because she invited him. Arya makes all the decisions. The girl asks her grandfather about his confidence and says that someone must take responsibility for this. Solon admits that if Ariadne were a normal child, he would say the same thing. But her grandfather began to respect her when she demonstrated the abilities of the essence on herself to gain her protection. Rebecca says it's not surprising, because she's Gloria's daughter. In an attempt to escape her father, she put all her determination into the moment she poured the contaminated essence onto her hand. The girl jokes that if Ariadne falls in love, everything will go nowhere, which causes Solon's displeasure. Suddenly, Rebecca says that Gloria contacted her shortly before her death, much to her father's surprise. Gloria gave her sister a note with the location and date, which she asked to keep secret. Solon asks if she met with her, to which she says that the meeting did not take place. Rebecca waited for her all day at the appointed place, but Gloria never came. Later, she learned of her death. The father furiously asks his daughter why she didn't tell him earlier, to which she replies that she kept silent because of his doubts and conducted her own investigation. The following words plunged the great mage into a nightmarish despair. The results of her investigations were all the same: an accident. Rebecca guesses that Gloria could not stand her husband's abuse. If this had been revealed, a divorce would have been inevitable. She also recalls that Solan tried to persuade Gloria to get rid of the child while she had the chance. And there were rumors that the Duke was a womanizer. He saw his mistresses immediately after the wedding, but no one believed it. Tears seep into the great mage's eyes. He admits that everything that happened is his fault. Rebecca says she knew her father would act this way, which is why she didn't tell him about the note. Solan thanks her for telling him. The daughter asks her father to stop crying, because he still needs to visit his beloved granddaughter. But Solan says that she will go to Arya without him, which raises questions in the girl, because he told her that he had finished his business in the capital. It turns out that this is not the case. The father hands his daughter a document. After reading it, Rebecca guesses that this is a certificate of guardianship over Ariadna. The girl thought that the Duke had admitted to torturing his daughter, since there was practically no evidence to challenge his right to paternity. Suddenly, Solan admits that he himself took the document from the Duke's house. Rebecca did not expect that her father would decide to steal the certificate, but he reassured her, for he had taken permission from the Emperor in exchange for teaching some members of the imperial family. Rebecca laughs at the Duke's insignificance and is surprised that her father's knowledge can be of such use. The girl cautiously reasons that the situation is very serious and, for now, everything is fine. But no one knows what will happen next. Rebecca does not believe that Gloria's death was an accident and suspects the use of poison that leaves no trace. She suggests that this is the reason Arya wants to donate the elixir to the temple, because if everyone finds out about it, the truth will be revealed. Rebecca, getting up from the sofa, advised her father to rest in the living room, while she herself would go visit her brother, because she wanted to see the princess as soon as possible. The girl is amazed that a child under 10 years old can think like this, so she decides to personally meet the child who came up with such a plan. Once in the Weaver Palace, Rebecca is surprised by some words that the servant said to her. She was surprised that the company, together with Arya, decided to go on a picnic.